Greetings, friends. My name is Eliu Perez, and I am your host here at Erizo TV. Today, I'm coming to you from the greater Kansas City area, where I have the privilege to be in the presence of a person who became simply an icon in the global water consulting industry, but who also started next to me at a cubicle in Phoenix back in the mid-'80s, and eventually became the president of Black Veatch's water division for the entire world. And she is Cindy Wallis-Lage. Cindy, welcome to the program.
Hi, good to see you.
Thank you for joining me today.
Absolutely, it's always fun to see you.
I want to go back to the beginning of Cindy. I met Cindy in the mid-'80s. I want to know Cindy's upbringing and what took her to graduate from K-State, and when Cindy discovered that she wanted to be an engineer.
Wow, so that's a long time ago. I was very fortunate that I had great family to give me insights on different things. And probably, I didn't know I wanted to be an engineer for a long time. What I did know is that I wanted to be in the environmental space. So I had grandparents that were farmers in western Kansas who were very, very focused on farming in a way that was honoring the land, without pesticides, without chemicals, dry land farming, not irrigating because they were in western Kansas. And so learning to respect the land and respect the environment and nature. And then I had grandparents who were a grandparent that was a science teacher who loved to take me on walks along rivers and creeks and talk about just the environment. And so I was very prone to wanting to go that direction, but I didn't actually know that there was an environmental engineering. I had heard of engineering, I tested well in math and science, but I really didn't know that there was an area that I could go into. So fast forward, I go to K-State. I was trying to enroll for my sophomore year, get my classes set up, and I could not get my advisor to meet with me. I mean, he just needed him to sign off. Like, I don't need your opinion. I know what I'm doing. Just sign up, right? And so I ended up having to go into the engineering office because that was who my advisor worked for, and said, look, I can't get this done. Can you just help me? And I am eternally grateful that the assistant dean there heard me talking to the secretary and said, I'll help you. Come in. So I went in and talked to him. I call this the power of a moment. He took 30 minutes to talk to me about my grades he was looking at and understand what I was doing. He said, why aren't you in engineering? And I said, because I was so wise. Because there is no environmental engineering. And he said, well, yes, there is. There's civil engineering. I'm like, no, that's roads and bridges and buildings. And he said, no, there is. And he showed me the opportunity. And with that, I went into civil engineering and never looked back. But it was him taking the time. He won't remember that. That was nothing. It was his job, right? But the impact you can make on somebody by just taking a moment to listen to them and talk to them and give them some insight was very powerful.
Changed your life.
Changed my life.
And so we graduate from K-State.
Yep.
And when do we hear the word Black Veatch for the first time?
So the first time I was actually traveling in a van with, it was civil engineering, we had to be in ASCE. And with that, I was then president of ASCE, and we were going to a conference, and our advisor to it was a gentleman by the name of Bob, and he was a great guy, and he said he would go to this conference with us. Well, we rented a van, but whoever rented the van, it was not me, rented the wrong size, so it was too small. So we were crammed in, and somebody always had to sit illegally. Now you can look back at that in the middle between the front two seats facing the back. And so it was my turn to drive, and everybody wanted to drive because at least you got your own seat. And Bob sat on the floor and was talking to me. He goes, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I'm applying to different companies. I said, what I really want to work for is CH2M Hill. That's who I want to work for. And he said, huh. He goes, well, what about Black Veatch? And I said, I don't even know who Black Veatch is. And so he proceeded to tell me about Black Veatch, and he said, I think you would be really interested in what they do, and it could be a good career for you, and it's Kansas City. But I said, well, I don't want to stay in Kansas City. And he said, well, that's okay. They've got all these places. So that caused me to interview with Black Veatch, and since I got rejected from CH2M Hill, it was a good thing.
This is amazing how the world works.
And I didn't want to go to Kansas City, and Black Veatch like, hey, we were needing people in other places, so I went to Phoenix where I met you, which was perfect. That's what I wanted. I wanted an opportunity to move away from Kansas. I wanted to be on my own. I wanted to make sure I could take care of myself and be on my own 2 feet.
Yeah. And I must say to the world that she was a student president of ASE chapter already, and we had the rumor mill in the office, the cooler talk. People, the day I met you, if it wasn't the first day or the second day, I remember being at the water cooler with either Kubrick or Okazaki, and both of them said, she's going to be running this joint one day. Little did we know, huh?
It was probably Okazaki.
Little did we know. And those words stuck to my mind, and I remembered them the day that we celebrated you becoming president of Black Veatch. You remember?
Yes.
We were in Florida with Julian Sandino, and we had a wonderful evening celebrating how you had gone to that. But could you tell me how you went from Phoenix to returning to Kansas City and pursuing your master's?
Sure. I always like to tell people that sometimes it's capitalizing on fate and what happens. So as you may remember, we had the Mesa water reclamation plant that we did there in Phoenix, and I loved doing that project. And what I loved about it, though, wasn't just the work that I was doing on it, but it was understanding the intent and the value it provided to the community, because it was a reuse plant. It was one of the very first larger scale percolation ponds. We're recharging the groundwater. Very excited about what it meant, and then also understanding nutrient reduction that we were doing there, which we hadn't done a whole lot of. We had done some, but we're moving into that arena, and so I was fascinated with the treatment process, and I had already started going to grad school. One of the things I said I would never do, and did, and I was at ASU, but at that point, it was before Bruce Rittman was there. It was before they had a strong environmental program. So I was looking at engineering management, but it really wasn't exciting to me. And so I was thinking about what I wanted to do. And I was talking to John Stukenberg, if you remember John, who had been process, was then running the Phoenix office, and I was talking about the process elements, and he said, there's the full process group, but you're going to have a master's for that. And couldn't get it at ASU. So then we were pursuing the next project. So it was another reclamation plant there for Mesa. And I was involved in the pursuit team, and I was excited. And so I made the decision that if we win, I'll stay because I want to do that project. If we lose, I'm moving back to Kansas City, and I'm going to get my master's at KU. And we lost. And so I went in and told John Stukenberg and said, I'd like to move. And what does that look like? And Black Veatch was very accommodating and helping me get the move organized. And then I moved to Kansas City and worked for 6 months to get residency before I then quit. I guess about 8 months, and then I quit and went to grad school. But I had that time to then work on Lynn Rodman's crew, which talk about an icon. And his influence in my career is tremendous, and one of the most fabulous mentors I've ever had. And so being able to have that time, but it was truly opportunistic. It's like, when I stay, lose, we go, boom, here I go.
AETD, I believe, and your master's degree cemented your position in the process space.
Yeah.
You know, where you really made a name for yourself.
Yeah. That was, those have to be some of my absolute all-time favorite years. Because when the work I had done on my master's, I had specifically focused on biological nutrient removal as an area that was really in its infancy. There was a lot of conversation. Is it real? Is it a chemical process? Is it really a biological process? And so going through that and getting my master's and feeling really confident about it, and then being able to take that and then put it into the real world and applications that were making a difference. And so I was able to do pilot plants on the East Coast and really drive that process and understand how it worked, and did some tremendous projects with nutrient reduction that I just loved. And I was doing those, you know, coast to coast. So I was in Arizona a lot for reuse facilities and nitrogen reduction, and then I would be on the East Coast doing nitrogen and phosphorus reduction, and working with those teams. I loved that. And I loved being in helping sell work and creating up that solution for the problems that they had, and then helping implement that was such an exciting time. And being able to help Black Veatch really differentiate with our skill sets, not just my skill sets, but as a team that we could be able to bring to our clients. It was exciting. And that work then leveraged me into global work. And then that was just a tremendous excitement to now be able to take those skill sets and take them to Singapore and Australia and the UK and Hong Kong and all over the place. It was really fun.
So the little girl out of Kansas was
Yeah.
like Alice in Wonderland all over the world.
Yeah, you know, I think that is something that people just don't always appreciate enough as to what you learn. It's not really even so much what you take to others, but what you learn from others on those trips, and working with those global teams. And you can come into it because you have your perspective, your lens of life, and what you look through, and you say, okay, this is the way we should do it. And then you go to another country and you start talking, and you're certain, you know, well, I can share this with you. And then you find that like there's so much that you didn't know, and so many other perspectives, that when we brought it all together, like we were such a better team when we all shared our experiences. And then how do we take that and make the best solution? I was in awe of the people that I met around the world, and their skill sets and their insights and their influence on me and my career to make me a better engineer. I thoroughly loved that time.
So Cindy, so you tell me a little bit about how that, when you get married, you have your children, you married Kent Lage,
Yep.
And you guys started a family. And how did life, how did you have to readjust your domestic situation with your travel? Did you come to an agreement with Kent? How did that work?
Yeah, so just as a reference, we had our first child in '93, Austin. And then 3 years later, we had boy-girl twins, Madison and Jackson. And so the world turned upside down with that. We were no longer in man-to-man defense. We were in zone, trying to figure out how to manage 3 kids, and especially with the twins, they were a little bit early, and so it was a rough time for a while. And I have to say that a couple of things that really come to mind. One, Black Veatch was tremendous. Terry Johnson was running the technology group at that time, AETD, and he was so supportive to me, to give me flexibility to figure out how do I live this new life? What does it look like? And that was very helpful. I wasn't forced to make decisions of how much, you know, was I full-time, was I part-time? It's like, let's just try, see what's going to work. And that let me kind of figure it out. We did decide, so Kent was an engineer at Black Veatch. And so we decided we couldn't both be there because we were both traveling. And so he had the opportunity to go be the project manager for a program, or program manager for a program he developed for Johnson County. And
Beautiful.
that was perfect because then he didn't travel. We decided which way do we want to go. This was a good balance. Well, it was a good solution. I don't know that we ever had balance. And then I just had to pay attention to my travels. And I could get overzealous sometimes on things I could do. And Kent would remind me, like, hey, you got to cut it back. It's too much. Yeah. But then, you also have the extremes of getting up at 3 a.m. to catch the 5:30 a.m. flight, to be able to take the last flight of the day back to get home at 2 a.m. so that I could have either breakfast with the kids or I put the kids to bed, right? So I learned to probably live at the edge all the time, and
There's no choice.
and not have any sleep, So, but it was good, and I think that, and I always had an open dialogue with the kids, and there were times, they would tell me they were sad that I missed something, but I tried really, really hard to be home for as many events as possible, their sporting events, their school events, and I think they've all turned out pretty well, so they must have managed okay.
I think that we need to send a shout out to Kent and Nancy, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. I am very, very clear. I could never have achieved in my career what I did without Kent. Yeah. He was my rock. He's the one who supported me. He's the one who pushed me sometimes, and he was the one who told me at times, you've gone too far. And that's what you need, right?
That sounds familiar. I've heard that from somebody.
I bet you have.
Yeah. All of a sudden, we get the big news that Cindy has been named president of Black Veatch Water. Tell me a little bit about how that happened.
Yeah, that was an exciting time. It was nerve-wracking, too. I really hadn't thought about that. People had made comments to me about, you'll be the president someday. I'm like, yeah, really, I'm good. I love the technical. And I was running, at that point in time, Technical Solutions, which was a global group, and it was all of the technology element, leading with technology for Black Veatch. And so it was beyond just the treatment side. It was bringing in hydro and dams, tunnels, and asset management and water resources and everything that we really did in the water space from a technical standpoint. And that was really exciting. And but then the opportunity came of, did I want to put my name in the hat to be president? And I didn't say yes initially. I actually spent a lot of time thinking about that because I wanted to be certain that I could give everything and that I really believed that I was the right person. So I spent a lot of time thinking about it. I reached out to Lynn and said, I want to talk to you about this and understand a little bit more, and then made the conscious choice that I wanted to put my name in the hat. And then it was all about winning.
Uh-oh. There she comes.
Yeah. And so I really did appreciate, not always enjoy, but I really appreciated the process. It was a very strong process that we had to go through. People sometimes think that those are just randomly selected, but it wasn't. I mean, there was essays, there were multiple interviews. You had an interview with Lynn for 2 hours. That's a long time, and Lynn grills you on a whole lot of things. And so that was really exciting. I remember when I found out, like, I will never forget that moment. That's a moment that sticks in your head. So I was driving to the office, and my executive assistant called and said, Lynn's trying to get a hold of you. And I said, oh, okay, am I supposed to call him? She said, I think you should call him. And I said, all right, I'll call him on my way. So I called and I said, I heard you were trying to get a hold of me. And he said, yes, I am trying to get a hold of you. And he goes, I wanted to talk to you. I wanted to let you know that the board and we've made a decision. We have decided, and I'm thinking I've lost. Like, I had already reached this point, like, I just know I lost. It's taking too long. You know. And he said, we'd like to offer you the position of the president of Black Veatch Water Business. And I went, are you kidding? And he said, do I usually kid? Would you like me to be kidding? I'm like, no, actually. It was such a Lynn thing. Do I usually kid around with you? Got it. So I was super excited, because I just saw so much opportunity to make a difference in the company. And that was my driver, is I really did believe that I had the opportunity to bring the water business to move us to an even better position, to be an even stronger part of the Black Veatch portfolio. And I had so much respect for all of the people within the business. I'd worked with them for a long time. I knew how good we were. We just needed to channel it a little differently. And so that was exciting to do. Yeah. It was very exciting.
Yeah. And I think very few people could complain from an engineering and process perspective. They knew they were beat. It was just the other side. The should we call it the social or political side of becoming the president of the company?
Yeah.
Because you must have some social skills, and you must have some diplomacy in you to become the person that you eventually became. And you had those ingredients, which is something that I think was. So you become president, and then immediately, I believe your world begins to grow even more.
Yeah, it really did. With that, then 2 months after I became president, then I was elected onto the board of directors for Black Veatch. And so that was very exciting to be able to, I'd been engaged with the board for a long time, but now I'm with them. And that is an eye-opening experience. I mean, every time I took a step forward and went into another role, I had some level of eye-opening, right? Until you sit in the chair or walk in the shoes, there's things you just didn't know. And so I found that exciting. It's a lot of learning. It was a lot of really absorbing as much information and insight as I could from people to figure out how to use that to help our business be successful. One of the other things that I did was to really make sure I was leveraging in the skill sets outside of the water business. And that was really important. So pulling in people from corporate, talking to people in other parts of the other business divisions, such that I could really learn from them and say, like, what can we do better and how we need to get there. Because, I was the first president that didn't come up through the operations piece. I came through the technical piece. And so there was an element there that I had some learning I had to do. But I knew the client base. I knew our global client base. I knew our people. I knew how to inspire and pull people together and unify us. And that was the critical piece. I had a fantastic CFO, so I would not have to worry. That part I knew I could work with. I didn't have to dig deep as much into that. I knew I had the people that could do that piece for me.
You have someone looking at the numbers for
you. Oh, yeah.
There's only so many hours in the day.
Yeah. If there was anything I could have wished for myself, I would have had more hours in the day. Yeah.
What was the greatest learning from the first couple of years of being president?
I think the greatest learning to me was the two things. The personal side of time management took on a whole new level, and trying to stay connected to what I called our front lines and our people, because I knew, they're the ones that make our business every day. But also then realizing and accepting how much I didn't know. And being willing to ask and being vulnerable to be able to gather that information and go to other people and say, help me understand this piece right here. What does that mean? And, sometimes that was Lynn. And Lynn was very good at that. I would just schedule time. Sometimes it was Karen Daniel and financials. Sometimes it was bringing in people from our organization effectiveness group. That was huge. Help me understand how I can harness this skill set differently than we have been. And so I think you just can't put the collaborative piece anywhere but first, because the minute you start trying to silo yourself and think you've got it all, that's when you go down. And so I hadn't realized we hadn't done enough of that, and I was amazed at the power that had to really open that up.
Being a conductor, you can no longer be playing that trombone, or you just have to make sure someone is playing it right.
Yeah. Well, and also, so to that point, I had to no longer be the process queen, as I had been named by many of our clients. And
water queen, we knew you.
Water queen is what I had to go to, I guess. But I remember Lynn telling me, you have got to walk away from the technical. You cannot keep that space. You have to let that go. And I was like, yeah, I'll let that go. I'm thinking, I'll still play a little bit. No, there was no room. Yeah. And there were so many good people. I didn't need to do that, but it was really hard to step away from that, because I love that stuff. Still do.
Well, you're naturally inclined to it.
Yeah, you get drawn to it.
Oh, yeah. And I have to believe that, being the president of a global company, having operations in Australia, in the Middle East, Europe, and so many places, exposed you also to meet wonderful people, amazing people, celebrities. You spent a lot of time in Singapore. What are your best memories of that?
The best memory of Singapore, as far as just an iconic moment, was going to the Lee Kuan Yew prize dinner. And Lee Kuan Yew spoke.
Oh, my goodness.
And I think he was 84 at the time. And he was mesmerizing. His confidence, his knowledge, what he did, how he went about it, going through just the history of bringing Singapore from third world to first world, and his commitment. And he noted, he had a little bit of an autocratic manner, opportunity there, authoritarian, but he used it for good. I'm not saying that is still the right way, but he did use it to make a much, much better, safer, healthier, prosperous country. And listening to him speak and people asking him questions, he opened it up for anybody to ask questions. And the guy was so sharp, just so sharp, on all kinds of different technology questions, political questions, didn't matter. And he took them all. And so that, and then being able to just meet him, is always going to stand out. I was truly in awe the rest of that trip, just thinking, I can't believe I heard from this man who did so much.
Yes.
So,
I have followed him. I'm a big fan. I admire what he did. And yes, he had to be a little bit of a tyrant. In some things. I mean, you couldn't chew gum,
Yeah.
And but there are many countries who are trying to get out of the third world, if you would. And I think he set a good example, of
and
how.
And he did it quickly.
He did it very quickly. But what amazes me the most is that he was dealing with numerous languages.
Yes.
He was dealing with numerous ethnicities. He was dealing with, the perfect storm, to bring together a country, and told them, we're going to speak English now.
Yeah.
That way we can all communicate, we can all be better together, etc. So what an amazing leader. I have to believe that was a pinnacle moment in your career.
Yeah, and when you tie that to just the water space, as you may remember, at one point he said, all policy will bow to water. He knew their ability to gain water independence was critical for them to become the power that they are and to be able to resist being beholden to other countries that could cut them off from water supply. And so when you look at the leadership that they have brought in the water industry space, with technology, being able to implement new ideas, how quickly they've been able to capitalize on new concepts and technologies, it's amazing. It's really influential. It's a tremendous influence, not just to their country, but to the world, to be able to see what can be done.
He was an amazing fellow, a grassrooter. You know, he was a grassroots guy. He would build his base, and then he would start promoting from the other side. I mean, talk about someone who could put all the pieces together at the end, you know?
Yeah.
He's fascinating.
Yeah.
And Cindy, what were places that you found yourself at that you said, oh my God, this is not Kansas anymore?
Yeah. You know, when I went to Riyadh, that truly didn't feel like Kansas anymore. That was a real interesting journey. It was interesting just culturally, you know, being a female, to go and meet heads of state and leaders within that country who don't normally deal with females was an interesting position to be in. I think, you know, it went well. I never felt disrespected. Mm-hmm. But I was very anxious culturally to make sure that everything I did was not offensive. Yeah. You know, and certain things like being told, like, make sure you don't reach your hand out to shake hands. So, like, if they want to shake your hand, they may choose to, but do not reach your hand out. Mm-hmm. Well, that is like second nature. And, you know, I'd find myself putting my hand behind my back, you know? Because I was like, oh, goodness, I know I'm not supposed to do it. Because the first time we went somewhere, and it was more like a practice, I think, for me, because it was a safe place. And the very first thing I did was like, hi, I'm Cindy. And they're like, Cindy. I'm like, right. That's right. I am not supposed to do that.
Yeah.
So, you know, that was interesting. Being in, when I was in Manila, being in Bangkok, you know, some very, very, very different places. Because, you know, Singapore is different, but it still has a lot of Western feel to it.
Oh, sure.
Australia, New Zealand, love the countries, but it's much more of a feel. When I was in those places, in India, you know, being in India, mm-hmm. It's a very, very, very different feel. And always trying to make sure that I was respectful of their cultures. It wasn't to come in and just say, well, you know, I'm an American. I really wanted to come in and be respectful of their culture, just like I expect people to be respectful of our cultures. So that was fun. It was very exciting. It's very thrilling to do.
But Cindy, what is the plan? What is the plan going forward? What is Cindy going to do now that she's an independent consultant?
Yeah. So I retired September 30th of 22. My husband retired the same day, so we jumped hand in hand, and we made the decision at that point that we were going to say no to everything, because the list was long. People tell me, oh, you know what you can do? Oh, you know you could do this. Oh, would you want to come do this? Mm-hmm. Like, I'm saying no to everything for 3 to 4 months. And during that time, I'm going to be very intentional as to what matters to me. Not what people think I should do, but really what do I care about. And so it was the opportunity of I could do anything. I could do nothing. And so I took that time to really identify what were my priorities. My priorities were, I really enjoyed board service. I felt I had a lot to offer from my learnings at Black Veatch and from a business executive to be able to take to other companies. I wanted to stay connected to the water space. I wanted to stay connected to sustainability. I wanted to support other women leaders, and I wanted to stay engaged with STEM for kids. And so out of that, I have built my current portfolio, and I am on 2 publicly traded companies, one very connected to water. I'm on a private equity-backed company that's connected to water and sustainability. And then I'm an advisory board member to another company who's really more in the dedicated treatment equipment and sustainability space. And then I started with two other strong women icons in our industry, Melissa Meeker and Deborah Coy. We started a group called Resolve for Responsible Succession Leadership, and we started that. I already had that in the works before I retired, and so we do workshops. It's a 2-year program to work with women who are looking out in the next mid-level and more senior level of how do we get stronger succession planning to move women into that pipeline, more women into that pipeline to be senior leaders, because I was just not seeing it change enough. Mm-hmm. And so that's been very exciting and time-consuming and doing that. And then I'm also supporting K through 12 program here in Kansas City, or in the state of Kansas, for STEM. And so, and then I did take on a professor of practice role at K-State to support the civil engineering as they are supporting into the university's initiative of water security. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, so that's, and then I'm really enjoying being a grandmother. So,
that's right.
Yeah. So,
yes. Congratulations.
Yeah, and looking forward to doing that for my other children too.
Yeah. But Cindy, I was going to ask you about legacy, but I think you have just described what you would like to leave us your legacy with everything that you're doing right now.
Yeah.
And what a beautiful decade to do it in your 60s, don't you think?
Absolutely. That was one of the reasons we did retire when we did, is we have our health, we have our energy. And we have our passions, and we want to keep doing that. And then I want to do some traveling. Well, we have been, and we'll continue to do traveling with Kent, which he never got to go before, and also to enjoy some of the spaces that we were often in and out of and didn't get to enjoy to the extent that I would have liked to. So that's fun. Any
favorite place on the planet that you enjoy particularly?
Well, we did go to the Maldives. Right for our 60th birthdays, and I have to say that was one of the most stunning places I have ever been. I would say just visually, but also just from an element of feeling just tremendous gratitude of the beauty that you see, mm-hmm. and respect for nature, and just to be quiet. I was amazed to find myself able to be so quiet and centered, and that was one of those things I thought, I need to find these spaces in my life.
It's beautiful. It's a wonderful way to spend these golden years, you know?
Absolutely.
They really are golden. I'm enjoying them.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying them so much. And Cindy, what message would you give to a young, female entering the engineering, or with some STEM capabilities in high school, thinking of an engineering degree? What advice would you give them as they approach college, number mm-hmm. one, and number two, as they approach employers?
My advice to young women is be confident in who you are. You don't need to compete with anybody but yourself. And sometimes we're our own worst critic. I know I could be, and have that voice in my head, and understand it, but put it away. I always focused so much on equality in college. I wanted to be equal. I didn't want decisions to be made about my performance or my opportunity because of gender. I just wanted it to be about my knowledge, and then as I was working, it was my business intelligence. But the other thing that I tell women is so important is never forget grace. I think women have a unique opportunity in the workplace to be able to bring just as much creativity and strength to our businesses, but they can do it with a level of vulnerability and grace that is unique, and that can be unifiers and can build trust with others. And so I've always thought of my career as a blend of grit and grace, because I had to have both. I had to stand my ground. I had, just being in the room, I changed things. I said, I'm equal. I can be here. But I also brought grace to that, to find a way to communicate differently and supportively and to bring new ideas forward. And so follow your passion, find your passion and follow your passion, seek new opportunities. Don't be afraid to say yes to things that make you uncomfortable. There was a client that I had, Maureen Stapleton at San Diego, who had a great saying that was like, lean into discomfort. And I think that is such a great piece of advice, as to sometimes you're uncomfortable and you're going to want to say, no, I don't think I'm comfortable. I'm not sure I should do that. Women want to always be, I got to be perfect before I can do it. No, just lean in, because really the things that make you uncomfortable are probably the things that are going to grow you the most and make you the strongest and make you the most successful. I will definitely say I have been uncomfortable many, many times.